Batman is by far one of the most popular characters in all of fiction. Statistically, Batman is actually the second most popular superhero in the world, behind some weird teenager that comic writers just can't stand to see happy. As a matter of fact, 97% of men actually believe that they themselves are Batman. That statistic may be a lie, but is easily believable given the type of character that Batman is. He has no powers, he's depressed, he's constantly switching between love interests, he's basically every single American man minus the rich part. So it's no surprise that all these years later, Batman remains one of the most popular characters in all media, whether it's in comics, movies, or today's topic, television. Batman on TV has been around for almost as long as the character himself has been, so I figured we'd take a deep dive into this side of the Caped Crusader and the bizarre history that surrounds it in celebration for the 85th anniversary of the character. While technically not a television series, the serials Batman had in the 1940s play a crucial role in the history of the character. Starting with 1943's Batman. This was a 15-chapter, or episode, long series that starred Lewis Wilson and Douglas Croft as a dynamic duo themselves. Not gonna lie, I love the names from this era. Starring Lewis Wilson as Batman. It's fire.
Say that again?
These serials follow the plot of good old 1940s war propaganda. See, if you didn't already know, it was commonplace for pretty much every single piece of consumed media in America during the early 40s to basically just be propaganda supporting what we would now know as World War II. These Batman serials were released just at a time when America was first entering the war, and we hated the Japanese. Everyone was doing it at the time. Disney, classic Warner Brothers cartoons, and obviously Batman. See, I hate them now because of anime, but Batman in the 40s did it before it was cool. I will say, however, it was surreal to hear Batman call his version of the Joker a Jap. Oh yeah, apparently the main antagonist of this series is a Japanese agent named Dr. Daka. However, interestingly enough, in early artwork made before the serial was released, it shows Batman and Robin going up against the Joker. So it makes me wonder if in the early concept stages for the series, if J. Carroll Naish was originally going to be doing whiteface instead of yellowface. There was another Batman serial made 6 years later in 1949 titled Batman and Robin, not to be confused with Peak Cinema.
It's a utility belt, not a money belt. 6 million.
7 million. Never leave the cave without it.
That was our first of many Batman recasts over the years, with Robert Larry playing Batman and Johnny Duncan playing Robin. This is also the first time we saw characters such as Commissioner Gordon and Vicky Vale on screen. Other than that, these serials were released post-war, so they didn't have any racist caricatures. They're just simple sci-fi stories, which, depending on who you are and how you look at it, could make them less appealing. It would take almost 2 entire decades before we would ever see Batman return to the screen, but when he did, him and Robin were both finally in a syndicated television series. In the early 1960s, Ed Graham Productions optioned the television rights to the Batman comic strips releasing at the time, and planned the straightforward juvenile adventure series, much like The Adventures of Superman or The Lone Ranger, to air on CBS on Saturday morning. Former American football linebacker and actor Mike Henry was originally set to star as Batman in a more dramatic interpretation of the character. Henry reportedly posed for publicity photographs in costume, but he was not signed for the role. East Coast ABC executive Yael Udoff, I hope that's how you say his name,
English, motherfucker, do you speak it?
who was a Batman fan in his early childhood, contacted ABC executives who were already considering doing a television series based on the comic strip action hero to suggest a primetime Batman series in the hip and fun style of The Man from U.N.C.L.E. When negotiations between CBS and Graham stalled, DC Comics quickly reobtained rights and made the deal with ABC, which farmed the rights out to 20th Century Fox to produce the series. In turn, 20th Century Fox, before being tied to Marvel and soon Disney, handed the project to William Dozier and his production company, Greenway Productions. ABC and Fox were expecting a hip and fun, yet still serious, adventure show. However, Dozier, who had never before read comic books, concluded that after reading several Batman comics for research, that the only way to make the show work was to do it as a pop art campy comedy, which, if some of you have read those Silver Age Batman comics, it's pretty easy to see why he wanted to go that route. Originally, espionage novelist Eric Ambler was to have scripted a TV movie that would launch the television series, but he dropped out after learning Dozier's campy comedy approach. Eventually, 2 sets of screen tests were filmed, one with Adam West and Burt Ward, and the other with, I don't even know how to say these with West and Ward winning the roles and becoming the GOATs. A lot of people aren't big fans of the series due to the more unserious tone and campy nature, but like, bro, just live a little. For an entire generation of people, including the guy who would become what many would call the definitive Batman, Adam West and Burt Ward were Batman and Robin. The series is a ton of fun, but I admit it can get weird at times. If you want to get a good grasp for the series and its tone, I suggest either watching it for yourself or checking out Scott Kramer's videos on the series. He doesn't really speak on it from a comic book fan point of view, but they are inciting and they are entertaining. The 1960s Batman series has a legacy that will probably live on for for as long as the character will, whether it's in sequel movies, comics, or cameos in large DC multiverse projects. Adam West played Batman all the way up until his unfortunate passing in 2017. May he rest in peace. Batman on TV after the 60s series ended in 1967 was kind of dry, if that makes sense. You didn't really get much outside of a few short-lived animated projects that were animated very cheaply and either featured Adam West himself voicing the character or just some random no-name actor. The biggest thing featuring Batman on TV between the 60s and the 90s, probably the Super Friends animated series, which I could do an entire video on by itself. Batman wouldn't appear on the silver screen again until 1992, with what many people would consider to be one of the greatest pieces of fiction of all time, including myself. After Batman has a string of extremely successful Hollywood blockbuster films with Tim Burton's Batman and Batman Returns, Warner Brothers wanted to make a children's animated series about the titular character. So, WB hired Bruce Timm, who had previously worked on other animated Warner Brothers projects, to help produce the legendary series we all know as Batman the Animated Series, starring the definitive Batman that I mentioned earlier, the greatest Batman actor of all time, the late great Kevin Conroy. Now, I could praise this series all day, but there's somewhat of a dark behind the scenes to this series as well. I already did a full video on this topic with my friend AJ, who appears later on in this video, a few years ago, and I'll link that below for you guys to check out so you can get more information on this. If you've ever noticed that Bruce Timm always seems to write Batman to have a romantic interest with every single female DC character, it shouldn't be too surprising that Bruce Timm, during his time on BTAS and for many years to come, was big on drawing his own not safe for work artwork. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with doing not safe for work art like that, but it definitely shows the type of person that Bruce Timm is behind the scenes, and it's also very questionable working on art like that while developing a show for children. That's just my opinion anyway. Despite that though, Bruce Timm and the DC animated universe's name is attached to will go down as some of the best adaptations of literally anything ever. Personally, these are my favorite iterations of my favorite characters of all time, especially Batman. After 2 successful seasons of Batman the Animated Series, the show was canceled so Bruce and his team could focus on the next DC project, Superman the Animated Series. After the success of Superman, the team brought Batman back for a crossover and eventually a 3rd season under a new name, The New Batman Adventures, in 1997, using a new art style and new Batman family cast. Shortly after, in 1999, the team made an entirely new character to star in his own series, that being Terry McGinnis in Batman Beyond. The DCAU would continue to go on strong during the next few years with Kevin Conroy's definitive performance as Batman dominating that side of the DC universe. However, people were still eager to see Batman face his own villains in his own solo series, which they would get in 2004 with the greatest opening theme ever. Batman released in 2004, and despite having some odd creative choices, was beloved by fans of the character and newcomers alike. In March of 2008, the Batman would sadly reach its end, and we were back to not having any Batman iterations on television for 8 months, and then some Cartoon Network interns did a bunch of cocaine and started watching Super Friends. Batman, the Brave and the Bold would air in November 2008 to some mixed reception, as it went for a more campy, Silver Age style Batman akin to the Adam West Batman from the 60s. As much as many people don't like it, there are plenty of people who absolutely love this series.
Hey guys, Batman Ultra 7 here. The editor of this video, by the way. First things first, Alter. Where's my money, honey? Secondly, I have a little bit of thing to talk about. The greatest Batman show there is, Batman the Brave and the Bold. This is not exactly my channel yet. Watch out, Alter. I'm taking over.
I love Batman the Brave and the Bold. Was this the first Batman show I had watched? No, not at all. I had seen BTAS via reruns on the Fox box, which would become 4Kids, and I'd watched it on DVDs all throughout my childhood. And I had caught most of the Batman 2004 on TV, but not all. The Brave and the Bold was the first time I felt a big ownership over a Batman show. This was made for me at the peak time of my childhood, for me to really soak it in. It was a perfect ritual for me. Watching it every Friday night on Cartoon Network, part of the same block as shows like Clone Wars, Generator Rex, and Secret Saturdays. There's so much I could say about this show that could become multiple videos, and maybe someday I will make those videos. Now, before Alter cracks the whip and says, you gotta finish editing the video, I just wanted to say a few words about how I feel about this show, and its staying power as one of the greatest pieces of comic book media to this day. Over the past week, when I did write this, I wrote this a while ago, it's been a trip. I was sick watching this show, just kind of reminiscing. And the beautiful thing about the show is it took these bigger-than-life, absurd comic book characters and put the absurdity within the context, the framework of everyday human issues. The show just is the perfect distillation of the range of tones, themes, and style you can go for in comic book stories, while still maintaining a consistent heart within it all. I think what people miss is that these stories don't need to be told one way. And The Brave and the Bold is the perfect recipe for that. And this is not even touching how timeless the animation and art design of the show is, and how impeccable the voice cast is across the entire show, or even just how the musical identity of the show feels like a culmination of so many different Batman projects of the past. And this is what Alter is talking about in this video. It was about celebrating the tradition of comics and a history of superhero storytelling in the pages of DC Comics, but also never dumbing it down for kids. And the show was never afraid of not being Batman the Animated Series. This show trusts the audience and believes in the audience to take on the ideals and lessons of the Dark Knight into their lives and become better people in the process. Brave and the Bold is a team-up show based on the principles and formats of the comic series its name came from, but it never leans too heavy towards either side, making for the best viewing experience. The fact that it's a Batman and Friends show never makes it un-Batman, because it remains to be the main character, while the other starring characters complement the Dark Knight and vice versa. This is the perfect show for kids, but it's also the perfect show for everyone. When this show was on Cartoon Network, they were having the peak of action TV animation, and Brave and the Bold was no different. While many shows struggle with either going full-on episodic, there's no continuity between episodes and no overarching story, or serialized, the show fits within an overarching structure, and much or most of the story has to adhere to the overarching planned story. I think Brave and the Bold melds these two styles of TV storytelling brilliantly. You can pick up and watch any episode of the show and not be missing anything. Just like a comic book, it's so accessible in that way, but at the same time, the show builds continuity and builds familiarity to really land when they get to these big arcs, culminating sometimes in two-parters like the Darkseid attack, the Starro invasion, or even the climactic face-off against Equinox. At the end of the day, Brave and the Bold works because it highlights the reason we love these Batman shows and Batman comics, because of his never-ending fight against evil, crime of all varieties and kinds, and how he inspires us each and every day to be better. Now let's get back to our regularly scheduled programming.
In November 2011, we'd see the unfortunate cancellation of Batman Brave and the Bold. However, soon after, Cartoon Network would double down on their DC-related animations and would start their own Saturday morning block called DC Nation. I plan on doing a full video on DC Nation, so I won't discuss much of its programming on here, but I will discuss its one and only Batman solo series, that being the shortly lived and widely beloved, by me and me only, Beware the Batman. Beware the Batman was a truly one-of-its-kind Batman experience, basically changing everything we know about the character except the core of who Batman is and how he operates, having a new sidekick that's not Robin, and introducing some of Batman's lesser-known Rogues Gallery members, including Professor Pig, Mr. Toad, Magpie, Anarchy, and others. The show was different as well because it followed a more serialized storytelling style that we had not seen previously in any other Batman projects. Beware the Batman was pretty much the redheaded stepchild of the DC Nation block, having moved to Toonami on Adult Swim halfway through the show's lifespan before eventually having the back half of the show air and the show just be written off as a tax write-off because of low toy sales. The show ended on a cliffhanger, and I'm praying that one day Warner Brothers and Max will eventually pick it back up. 2014 also reintroduced us to Batman in live-action television with the critically acclaimed series Gotham. Gotham isn't like all the other interpretations of Batman on this list because it follows Bruce Wayne when he's younger, first figuring out this whole vigilante thing, with young members of his Rogues Gallery roaming the streets. It also has a very large focus on Gordon as a character, making this series more akin to Batman Year One, which is one of my all-time favorite Batman books. By the end of the series, this universe's Bruce will finally become Batman, and after Gotham ended in 2019, we didn't get another solo Batman series all the way till our current year 2024. We're not talking about Batwoman. I refuse to talk about Batwoman or Gotham Knights, God forbid. In 2021 at DC's own digital press event, DC Fandom, 2 new DC animated series were revealed to be in the works. My Adventures with Superman and Batman Cape Crusader. Years would go by with no news for both series until it was revealed that both shows that were originally going to be on Max were being shopped around a different network. My Adventures with Superman ended up being picked up by Adult Swim, similar to Beware the Batman, yet Batman Cape Crusader just kind of disappeared. We didn't see any type of update at all for the series until we eventually saw some leaked concept art. It was then later revealed that the show was picked up by Amazon Prime and would release in 2024. Now that season 1 of the series is out, I'm going to give you guys my thoughts. The series was produced by Bruce Timm, who did Batman the Animated Series and DCAU like I mentioned earlier, as well as Matt Reeves, who did the 2022 Robert Pattinson Batman film. Apparently J.J. Abrams was also involved with the series, however, I don't know what the hell he did. Either way, the series is definitely a different take on Batman. The series takes place in the 1940s, giving us a more noir vibe, focusing more on Batman's detective skills rather than fighting. Personally, there's a lot to this show that I feel is not the best. A lot of it is very generic, especially for Batman. This show, however, does do a lot really well, and it was recently picked up for a second season, so I'm pretty excited to see where it goes, and hopefully it starts expanding upon the foundation that it already laid out. As of me recording this, that is the complete history of Batman on television. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments below, and make sure to comment down below your favorite show that I mentioned today. Also, make sure you go stream my music, Alter Rap, on all platforms, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.
Okay, now let me just slip into my gear. Have you seen my utility belt?
Tom, you're not actually Batman.
I know, but I'm hyped for tonight's show. Besides, the Dark Knight and I are kindred spirits.
And how's that?
Well, we both only work at night, and we have a very strong dislike for injustice.
Oh boy, here we go.